How do you learn a language? How do you learn Spanish or any other language efficiently? Well, there are three things you need to learn. Three types of knowledge you need. You need vocabulary, you need grammar, and you need pronunciation. Both for understanding the language and for speaking it, you need all three things. Then you need to translate this knowledge into skill, and we'll talk about that later. First, how do I acquire the knowledge? Well, let's start with vocabulary, which is the most important thing, because if you don't know the words, it doesn't matter how much grammar you know, you simply won't be able to understand anything, and of course you won't be able to speak, right? So how do we learn as many words as possible, as fast as possible? And you do need to learn a lot of words to understand a language. Well, we're going to use two things. First thing is, and this is really important, mnemonic associations. This is an ancient technique that ancient Greeks and Romans were using already to memorize speeches that were hours and hours long, and they were using it to learn foreign languages as well as math formulas and things like that. Basically, you visualize and associate the vocabulary with the target language vocabulary, so your words in your language with the target language words. It's more than that to it, and it requires some practice to get good at, but it's definitely a good use of your time, because you can learn vocabulary 100 times faster if you do this. I literally learn hundreds of words a day doing this. You can memorize words and they stick. You can make them stick. You don't forget them by doing this, and this will make input way more comprehensible from the very beginning, and it will make speaking much easier as well. You need a lot of vocabulary, and mnemonics is the best way to memorize a lot of words fast. The other thing you need is mass sentences, and this will help with grammar as well. Mass sentences are basically, well, as the name suggests, a long list of sentences in which all the basic vocabulary and all the basic grammar is included. Spanish grammar is more complicated than English grammar, but it's not impossible to learn. The only thing you need to learn it without studying all the rules, without studying theory and all that nonsense, all the tenses and all of that, which is really boring and inefficient. The only thing you need to do is take a really long list of sentences in which all the grammar is included, not only the basic stuff, but even the advanced stuff if you want, plus all the important vocabulary, and you learn the whole list of sentences. You use the technique I explained earlier, the mnemonic associations, to learn all the words, and then you use translations, and you learn all the sentences by heart. You need, a couple thousand sentences maximum to learn all the grammar and most important vocabulary. And if you take these 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 sentences maybe, and you focus on learning these really, really well, you learn all the necessary vocabulary and grammar super fast if you do it right, instead of just watching random videos and things like that. Yeah, if you do it with the key words and the key grammar, just using a limited amount of text for it, text and audio, because you can also use audio for this. You can binge listen to it as well. More on that later. You will learn all the vocabulary and grammar you need super fast for Spanish or for any other language. Now, let's talk about pronunciation. It's the third ingredient of comprehension. Pronunciation is really important, and a lot of people just don't care about it or don't think it's important. They just prefer to ignore it because they're not comfortable with it. They know they don't sound good when they speak in the language, but they pretend it's not important because, well, a lot of people are like that. If you kind of insecure about things you're not all that competent at, you rather ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. But in reality, if your pronunciation is really bad, well, first of all, people won't understand you or won't take you very seriously. You will always sound like Apu from The Simpsons, for example, like a caricature. You don't want that. You want to sound, and I know my English pronunciation is not 100% like a native speaker, but I think I'm 80, 90% there when it comes to sounding like a British person. You can get there with practice. But also, it's not only about sounding good when you speak, it's also about understanding. Because if you don't know how pronunciation works, you will not be able to understand native speakers. Even if you know all the grammar and all the words, you don't know what they sound like when a native speaker says them in fast speech, you will not understand them. You need to learn the pronunciation. And the best way to do this is, first of all, lots of listening. And just listening alone won't be enough, because especially if you haven't done everything that I talked about earlier, if you haven't memorized lots of words, the language will just be noise, right? You need to know the words, but then you need to listen to those words a lot in context to end up understanding them. You get good at listening comprehension, but doing a lot of listening. But that takes a lot of hours. And the main way you can speed up the process is shadowing practice, which is also really helpful to improve your speaking. Notice that every single one of these techniques I'm mentioning is good not just for one thing, but it works on several skills at the same time. This is because I only recommend the techniques that are extremely efficient. This is all about being time efficient, saving time, getting results as fast as possible, right? So, shadowing. What is shadowing? Shadowing is listening and repeating, but simultaneous. Instead of listening to a sentence, period, and then you repeat after, which would be fine as well, but shadowing is more effective. You listen to the same sentence 5 times in a row, and each time you speak alongside it. Yeah, you repeat the sentence, but together with it. So you, like when you sing a song, you try to sound exactly the same tempo, same rhythm, same pronunciation, obviously paying attention to how each word is pronounced, but also the ups and downs and the natural tone of the language, all of that stuff. This will really help your own pronunciation for your speaking. It will also help with fluency because you're drilling thousands of sentences. Yes, thousands of sentences. You should do this with 1,000 sentences a day. Do this. Try just this. Drill 1,000 sentences every day for 30 days. Just do this for Spanish. Take 1,000 sentences and drill the whole thing. Listen and repeat. Shadow it once a day, the whole list, for 30 days. And you'll see how much your speaking improves in just 1 month. So, as we say in boxing, drillers make killers. What does this mean? If you drill the necessary techniques over and over again, the key techniques, you get really good at them. And then you do really well in live practice or in competition. The same applies to language learning. If you have your key sentences and you drill those sentences over and over again by shadowing them, you will get very good at saying those sentences very quickly. No hesitation, no thinking, no need to form the sentence thinking about the grammar, any of that. It's a sentence that you've said 100 times, or you've said similar sentences 100 times, so you just can say it whenever you need it. So this is the power of repetition with shadowing. So you need to do a lot of it. It's great for fluency and also for pronunciation. Your own pronunciation will improve and your knowledge of pronunciation will improve, so your comprehension also improves. In my experience, it's best to combine shadowing and then listening to podcasts with native speakers so that you're working on your sentences, you're repeating the same sentences over and over again, you're working on your pronunciation, and then you're testing your comprehension every day with real-life content. This is the best way to get really good at both understanding and speaking the language. Now, just shadowing will help you speak in complete sentences with mostly correct grammar, using the right vocab, so it will do a lot for your speaking accuracy as well. Yeah, you'll speak with very few mistakes. But if you want to make even fewer mistakes, you want to troubleshoot your Spanish and you want to make sure that you're almost perfect. There's no perfect, but you can be 99% there. You should do retrieval practice. What is retrieval practice? Retrieval practice is something that if you ask any actual scientist, not the social science people, like, social sciences, the linguists and all that, no. Actual neuroscientists like Huberman or Carl Newport, or the people who really know how to learn anything, not just a language, how the brain works. They will tell you that retrieval practice is the most effective way to learn vast amounts of information fast. I would add that combining it with mnemonics makes it even more effective, but retrieval practice is the scientifically proven most effective way to memorize information. And how does this work? Basically, you have to first review the information and then you have to retrieve it. You have to test yourself over and over again with instant feedback. Does this look like in the context of learning Spanish? You get your sentences in English and then you get the Spanish translation and you hide the Spanish and you take the English sentences and you try to translate them, saying them aloud from English into Spanish. And then you get the feedback, you get the right answer. And if you made a mistake, you repeat the sentence aloud correctly and then you review it later. And then you do it with the next sentence, read it in English, try to say it in Spanish, get the feedback, you review it later, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a couple of days. And you do this with hundreds of sentences a day. This is very hard work. That's why most people avoid retrieval practice. But if you read Cal Newport's book, I don't remember the name of it, but it's something about straight A students, how to be a straight A student. He analyzed how a lot of straight A students memorize information. And the thing about them was that they didn't spend more time than average studying. The main thing about them was that they were doing retrieval practice. So it's not time consuming, it's time efficient, it's just very hard work. So most people avoid it. And they just instead review and read and things like that. But if you do this, you'll save a lot of time. And you'll get much better at thinking in Spanish, thinking of complete sentences, saying them correctly without having to think of how grammar works. And it will work. You will say the sentences correctly, right? And that's basically it. The last thing I would add is that all these exercises are extremely effective, but the main language learning technique that I recommend you combine all these exercises with is language islands. Language islands is a very simple concept that I learned from a book by a Russian linguist. And it's basically writing a list of all the normal interactions you have, all the common interactions, or even the future interactions you want to have, all the conversations, all the topics you want to talk about, and write absolutely everything you want to say. Yeah, so you choose your childhood and you write 100 lines about your childhood. Your work, and you write 100 lines about whatever you do for work, and so on and so forth. And you translate everything into the language you learn, Spanish in this case. And then you apply shadowing. You create an audio file and you listen and repeat those sentences over and over again, and you do retrieval practice with those sentences. Because if you do shadowing and retrieval practice and you memorize the vocabulary from random sentences, from mass sentences, it will already be really effective. But if you also do it with specific sentences you want for your own conversation topics, it'll be even more effective, and it will massively boost your ability to speak the language. Your Spanish will get way better if you do this. So make a list of 50 to 100 topics, situations, conversations, etc., interactions. And for each one of them, write 20 to 30 lines, everything you want to say for that specific topic, that interaction. Translate everything and then apply the shadowing technique and retrieval practice. First, memorize the vocab with mnemonics. You do this, and in 100 hours, you will have learned Spanish better than most people after 3,000-4,000 hours of doing YouTube videos or apps or things like that. This is how you effectively learn Spanish without wasting time. And if you're watching this channel, you don't want to be wasting time. Most people I work with are entrepreneurs, professionals, people who are high achievers, not people who have time to waste, right? So you should be using your time effectively if you want to get real results.